Hello everyone, welcome back for some more Let's Read Fate's Strange Fake. Uh, I did in between parts go back and reread this section because I definitely originally sort of read this a bit wrong. I thought that this was the birth of Gilgamesh, but then I really started thinking, I'm like, it was a bit confusing. So I did a bit of looking in, and absolutely not. It was not Utu who made Gilgamesh in the forest of Enlil. That is the birth of Humbaba. And I did notice this, but I didn't actually sort of put it together. But like you see Berserker here looking into the forest. And right, it thinks tall stone towers are the cedar forests of Lebanon. I'll take you to a real forest later. So that made me think. I'm like, does that mean that is Humbaba summoned into the Berserker, right? Was the Thomas Edison, like, is it half Thomas, like, is Thomas Edison just not strong enough to be summoned on their own? So either it's Prezi King, but is this, Thomas Edison plus Humbaba? Is that what we're getting with this? That's what I'm curious about. Yeah, so that's what I was sort of thinking as I read that, but I didn't really say that there. But from what I'm reading here, so we have this lump of clay, right? It was a everlasting series of screams. And so it was just a screaming calamitous voice, right? But then eventually there is a human voice in there, right? So eventually Enkidu could talk to this voice in there is from what I'm getting. The one thing that is in there is this thing about the 7 rings of light that shone like rainbows. That is a real thing from the myth. That is not a fate thing. So I did some look into that. That is absolutely a fate thing. So that's very interesting, right? So no, that was absolutely what, what was going on. Because the next time Enkidu saw her, that radiance, right? Because then afterwards they had to, basically Gilgamesh and Enkidu had to kill the Humbaba, and that was the whole thing, right? So yeah, so I guess what I kind of got this as is this is Thomas Edison plus Humbaba is what this one is, which would make sense for the rainbow rings, even though Thomas Edison does have rainbow things in, right? Like those are in FGO, but I guess these are different rainbows. So that's interesting, right? Anyways, let's get back to where we were then so we can continue on with our reading. Okay. Interlude. A mercenary is a free man one. Here we go. The Ward World. The Kuraoka residence. A short while earlier. This is before the meeting with... okay, because I said Zheng, but no, it's Zhao. Sorry, I forget your name because Zheng noticed immediately. No, it's Zhao actually. Very forgettable sort of character who I only have the basic knowledge of, but yes, okay. Anyways, short while earlier. Oh, thank goodness. My daughter seems safe. She's sleeping peacefully. Kuraoka Yukaku stated, watching his daughter through the window from the courtyard. Sigma, who had followed him back, considered the situation. Assassin had declared that she would investigate the giant 3-headed dog and was acting independently. Sigma had followed Tsubaki's father, Yukaku, in order to obtain more information, but the all-important Tsubaki appeared to be taking an afternoon nap, and he could learn nothing definite. In that case, why don't I try getting to the heart of the Kuraoka's magecraft? The child Tsubaki must be rooted in it. What type of magecraft do you study? The expression vanished from Kuraoka's face as he answered. You expect me to tell an outsider that? It was what any mage would say. At the clock tower, you could tell the direction of a mage's interests by the school they belonged to, and many announced their work to gain influence. Even so, few would disclose the specifics of their magecraft. That practice was not limited to the world of magecraft, Ordinary businesses and researchers did the same thing. Nevertheless, Sigma deliberately pushed ahead to confirm his guess. I want to know so that I can secure Tsubaki's safety. He did not lie. Sigma's current objective was to escape from this ward world, but before being sent there, it had been to accompany Assassin and secure Kuraoka Tsubaki's safety. He did not know what kind of abilities that pitch-black servant possessed, but if it had the power to detect lies or hostility, Yukako could prove to be fatal. More importantly, his question was also intended to confirm something. Kuraoka Yukaku's eyes glazed over for a moment, then, after a few seconds, he broke into a placid smile. I see. If it's for Tsubaki, then I guess I've got no choice. With that, Sigma was certain. As I thought, this world, including the personalities of the people being controlled, exists to protect its master. That pause must have been the time it took for the servant controlling Kuraoka Yukaku's mind to make a decision and guide him. And he's probably not the type to doubt what I say as long as I don't lie. He said that it's probably a conceptual entity related to death and disease, but... As Sigma speculated about the servant that had produced this world, he remembered mystic codes made with pseudo-personalities. He had fought them both as enemies and worked alongside them to complete missions. Among Magecraft users, the woman-shaped liquid mercury mystic code used by the heir of the Elmaloy family was particularly famous. They were essentially like loyal robots that carried out their users' orders, but many were capable of more adaptive autonomous thought than current AI. Still, it's a servant we're talking about. Maybe I should assume it thinks more like a human than the Elmaloy's mercury mystic code. I pray it doesn't think like a mage. While Sigma was lost in thought, his own face resembled that of an emotionless android. He remained oblivious to that as he continued solemnly questioning Yukako. What does your family specialize? What does your family special? That should be what is your family's magecraft specialized for? I'd like you to tell me if you're using it to perform any special treatment on Tsubaki. Treatment? Treatment? That's right. Of course I am. The girl's father did not hesitate to admit it. He began to explain before Sigma could even ask a follow-up question. Yes, I found a guidepost. Ecstasy tinged Yukaku's expression despite his brainwashed state. His words to Sigma were charged with emotion, as if he were proud of what he had accomplished. I couldn't beat the Makiris by being decent. Their actual bloodline is basically a swarm of insects at this point. Their perfect use of insects is beautiful, but my objective was symbiosis with the magecraft I use, a more natural form of symbiosis than parasitic insects. I know. How many bacteria do you think a human body hosts? More than several hundred different types of bacteria function alongside human cells to form an intelligent life form. Compared with the number of bacteria, the number of human cells is half at best. Sigma recognized the family name Makiri. They were a family of mages in the Far East, and one of the three families that created the original Holy Grail War. He recalled Francesca saying that they employed an efficient but heretical technique of implanting crest worms and other insects in their bodies, and merging them with their internal organs to create pseudo-magic circuits. Sigma had personally had other things implanted in him as a child. Although never insects, so he decided it must be similar. Both methods shared the fact that, from the perspective of a non-mage, they were inhumane. The mage continued to expound his life's accomplishments, even while his listener was busy dwelling on his past. Being a mage, he had not announced them publicly, but he must at least have the desire to show the world what he had done. I shivered when I saw those— I forgot about this! I shivered when I saw those microorganisms I collected near some ruins in South America. I never imagined any bacteria could be so mystically compatible with humans. I don't know if they're a remnant of evolution that took place in the Age of Gods, or if those microorganisms have a completely different origin from normal Earth species. I couldn't develop them from scratch, but I was able to modify those bacteria and adapt them to our magecraft. I completely forgot that it's the same frickin', bacteria mold that was like Quetzalcoatl and stuff. Right. It sounded as though he mixed the magecraft of the Makiri family with the peculiar microorganisms he discovered in South America to create something that could be called a bacterial familiar. I forgot about that crazy connection. Could also be a virus, even smaller than bacteria, but the effect the difference would have was outside Sigma's area of expertise, so we decided to disregard it for the moment. I caused the microorganisms I'd modified using magecraft to enter a symbiotic relationship with Tsubaki's magic circuits. I didn't anticipate they would spread to her brain, but Tsubaki's magic circuit showed major changes for a single generation. Do you realize how valuable this is in magecraft? That's true. Magic circuits, the source of mage's power, like blood vessels for circulating magical energy, ordinarily took many generations to develop. The number of magic circuits a mage possessed was set in stone. It was possible to open dormant circuits, but not to add more. With the exception of methods like the Mikiri's methods of implanting insects as substitute circuits. But Kuraoka claimed that he had done it. That's impossible. Yes, it is. It was like Yukaku had read Sigma's mind. I can't give her more magic circuits. I changed their quality and capacity. The microorganisms I created automatically awaken magic circuits and utilize them in the most efficient way, all to make their habitat as comfortable as possible. As a benefit, Tsubaki is able to circulate magical energy through her body far more efficiently than someone else with the same number of magic circuits. Those revitalized magic circuits should make Tsubaki an excellent mother in the future. The actual number of magic circuits will probably increase dramatically in her children's generation. Yukaku sounded much more like a mage than he was, than when he had been speaking as a father earlier, but Sigma was mostly unmoved by the change. He was a magecraft user who was born as a result of government experimentations. Since childhood, he had been subjected to numerous experiments with little concern for his life. He had not known the concept of human rights until after the fall of his country. So when Sigma heard how Tsubaki's parents had used her as a test subject, he felt neither sympathy for her nor anger at Yukaku. But, although he did not feel anything, he still thought and asked more questions. Are those bacteria in your bodies as well? Yes, but only at the trial stage. The latest version we infected Tsubaki with will only take roots in infants whose organs haven't fully developed yet. It was hell to tune. We were frantic when she lost consciousness, but relieved to hear that her ability to leave descendants was intact. No, Tsubaki is awake now. Isn't that the best we could hope for? Who cares about her children? Yes, Tsubaki is perfect. Yukaku gradually descended into muttering to himself. Sigma decided that he must be confused by the contradictions between his past actions and his current mental state. If this were the worst his confusion got, he really must not have any negative feelings about experimenting with his own child's body. A train of thought suddenly reminded Sigma of his own parents. He had never seen his parents' faces. His father had never been identified, and Francesca had told him that his mother died in a distant country. She had had a boy's body and called herself Francois then. You're so chill about that. Still, why had Francesca already known about his mother when she had only just met him? He hadn't asked her, but... Don't get the wrong idea. Just because I was interested in your ancestry doesn't mean I'm interested in you. Would you like that if I said that? You don't feel anything? Oh, okay then. That's all I've got to say about that. That's really funny. God, Francesca's so funny. Had been the only answer he got, and made no sense to him. Sigma, who did not know what his parents looked like, did not know how to act in front of Tsubaki, who had been raised by hers, but he was able to grasp one thing from the conversation with Yukaku. Being raised by your parents did not necessarily mean a higher standard of happiness than being raised by a government agency like he had been. There were probably a difference in the percentages, but mages were far removed from human sentiment to begin with. When he thought what it would be like to be in Tsubaki's place, would he welcome the loss of freedom, or being treated as a factory for magic circuits, always asleep and unable to carry out even carry out orders? Not long before, he had reached the vague conclusion that he didn't think it would be much different. In that sense, Kuraoka Tsubaki was probably similar to him, Sigma thought. In this fake world, she might have found the sound sleep he wanted. I think she wanted. Or maybe? Defeating her servant would mean destroying her peace. Because is it the sound... Okay, in this fake world, she might have found the sound sleep he wanted? Are we talking about... Oh, no, I see what it's saying. Okay, so in this fake world, this is what Sigma wants. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. If only there was I wouldn't question that line if there hasn't been like 3 or 4 different weird typo sentences just before. Defeating her servant would mean destroying her peace. What should I do then? He had no orders about the situation, and unless he escaped from this world, he would not receive any. You remember what Francesca had told him right before the start of the fake Holy Grail War. Once you've called up a heroic spirit, do whatever you feel like. Whatever I feel like, huh? Cut off from Francesca and Faldius and forced to think and act on his own, Sigma stared at his hands as he began to seriously consider the question. At that moment, there was nothing he could do but think. What should I do? While Sigma was busy questioning himself, Assassin activated one of her noble phantasms. Sink into a dark prison. Meditative sensitivity. Zabania. A perception-type noble phantasm that attuned her to the surrounding space as if she were the world's shadow and sensed nearby currents of magical energy and wind. Using those currents, she attempted to locate either the giant black shadow that seemed to be controlling the giant 3-headed dog or the hematophage, who must be connected to this world. What she found, however, was a different current of magical energy. It was giving off a strange current, as if to disturb the balance of magical energy throughout the entire city. It was an infinitesimal current. Without her noble phantasm, she would not have been able to detect it. Is this magical energy leaking out? No, leaking in. Or is it? The flow was like the whole world was breathing magical energy through that one air hole. She paused briefly, wondering whether to pursue the giant 3-headed dog, but ultimately decided to follow the fluctuation of magical energy. She thought that where it led was simply too symbolic, might even offer a hint to escape the world. She headed toward the source of that strange current of magical energy in that balanced world, toward the top of Crystal Hill. Oh boy, we're going right in. Dream and reality are both illusion too. This is we're back in. Let me take a sip of my tea. Okay, chapter 19. Okay, chapter 19. Aika Seijo. Why had she visited this city just as the whole fake Holy Grail War began? That was something that even she did not know for certain. While wandering around her hometown of Fuyuki, she had stumbled into a castle-like building in the forest. There, she had been captured by a beautiful white-haired woman, and something had been done to her. Looking back on it, she thought it must have been some kind of mind control magecraft, but Aika did not know much about magecraft and was not sure of the specifics. The next thing she knew, however, she had been put on a ship to the United States with only the order to participate in the American Holy Grail War. She was not sure why she had to go by ship, but considering she had no passport, she almost certainly entered the country illegally. Well, that answers a question I had before. She'd actually been given a fake passport and visa on the ship, but had never gone through customs. Her memories of the voyage were also hazy. Before she knew it, she'd been able to bit my tongue. She'd been able to speak English. That was probably something to do with magecraft too. Aika had been abandoned on the west coast of the United States in that state, and been forced to use what little cash she had been given to make her way towards Snowfield. Well, that's a strange line considering one of the first things you see in the show is her with a lot of money and using way too much of it. Let's see here. The words, "I will erase this little Red Riding Hood that has been seared into you," might have been a form of suggestion that had led her to see the hope in something so vague and come all the way for it. Or maybe she had just been so frightened by the all too simple for a curse threat. If you run, a curse will devour your life. Ayaka. I'm Seijo Ayaka. She reminded herself that it was Ayaka Seijo in English while repeating Ayaka over and over. While attending university, I lived in the Senna apartments and... University? Which university? Her memories were getting hazy. She could not escape the feeling that all her memories from birth to right until then were sinking into a dense mist. No, it was not just a feeling. Her memories were actually getting hazier little by little. Ayaka. Seijo Ayaka. I'm Ayaka. Her identity was fading like a star before the moon. To her, that name was a password to hold herself together. Huh. Okay. That was very briefly shown in the anime, but, not much there. The present, the city in the ward world. A wind drew closer. A wind drew closer. A wind of death that threatened to blow away Ayaka's life along with the memories waving like mist within her. Oh, she was not able to react. A giant dog bigger than a house made a high-speed swipe with claws like the arm of an excavator and kicked up a fierce blast of wind on the street. How much time had passed since the giant three-headed beast, Kerberos, had begun to attack the police? Part of her felt like it had just been a few minutes, while another part felt like it had been more than an hour. Ayaka had followed Saber's instructions and taken shelter inside a nearby building, but the building's interior had begun to collapse in the aftermath of the massive beast's attacks. The instant she hurriedly fled outside, she found Kerberos blocking her path as if it had been waiting for her. Each of Kerberos' claws reminded her of a sharpened sword. If they touched her, she would die. By the time that fact sunk in, the claws were already just a few meters in front of Ayaka. No matter what she did at that point, it was too late to dodge them. Huh? What am I... Could the reason that the fact that her name was Seijo Ayaka had popped into her head been her life flashing before her eyes because her brain had sensed that she was about to disappear? With her memories hazy, it had been just her name that flashed through her mind, and not her whole life. Her body stiffened, but in front of her, not a memory of the past, but the indisputable present appeared to sweep aside the approaching despair. There was a loud crash, and the severed tip of a sword-like claw went sailing through the air. Saber! Are you all right, Ayaka? Saber was holding onto what looked like a halberd. It was letting off an obviously unusual light. Even an amateur like Ayaka could tell that it was not a normal weapon. But it was not the sword that Saber had originally had with him. His original ornate sword had been confiscated by the police, and he had lost that decorative sword from the mansion in his battle with the golden heroic spirit. Hey, that's mine, a nearby policeman with short afro shouted. He stared wide-eyed from his own hands to the weapon in Saber's. Ayaka realized that Saber must have snatched it from him. Sorry, I borrowed it. It was an emergency, so I'd appreciate it if you'd let it go. Saber lightly tossed the weapon back to the policeman, who hurriedly caught it and shot a sharp glance at Saber. But seeing Ayaka unhurt, he readied his weapon to fight again without another word. Just this once. Next time I'll arrest you for theft. How frightening! I wouldn't want to be hanged. Saber laughed as he casually picked the demonic beast's severed claw off the ground at his feet. Huh? What did you... Ayaka had barely opened the mouth before Saber gripped the tip of the claw and swung it like a baseball bat. Excalibur! The demonic beast claw he had picked up glowed brighter for an instant and released a band of light. The slash of light sliced through the main street toward the intersection where the demonic beast held its position. It plunged into the demonic beast's flank and made its massive form stagger, splattering black blood. Did that do it? No, it doesn't seem to have much effect, Vera coolly answered John. It was not a matter of size. Its toughness, the sharpness of its claws, and the intensity of the aura of death that shrouded it were raised far above what they would have been when they encountered it in front of the hospital. Almost as if to prove with that power that this world was the demonic beast's proper home ground. The nearby police officers and Ayaka expected Saber to follow up with another strike, but he stood the giant beast's claw on the ground, still holding it, and in a clear voice asked the behemoth a question. Oh God, watchdog, guardian of the bottomless pit, listen if you have sense, and answer my question. Huh? Ayaka let out a baffled expression, and Vera, John, and the other police officers stared wide-eyed at Saber's face. Saber paid them no mind and bellowed as if he were exchanging introductions with an enemy general on the battlefield. We are not souls who turn our back on the underworld and struggle against judgment and tranquility. We are living men who will one day meet our deaths as we walk the righteous path. You may judge me, a heroic spirit, to be a soul escaped from death if you will. The rest, however, are undeniably alive. If you are the sworn and loyal companion of the Lord of the Underworld, I ask that you do your proper duty. What say you?" He cut an impossibly majestic figure. Even the bewildered Ayaka was almost drawn in by his performance in that instant. His bearing was just that regal. He was showing a different side of himself than when he had discussed whether to kill a little girl, or when he had sworn to protect Ayaka. If she had to compare it to something, it was closer to when he gave his speech on top of the police car. But the fact he was giving his speech in such a dangerous situation, into a titanic beast that might not even understand words, set it apart. Despite that, Saber's attitude was so dignified that it almost forced Ayaka and the police officers to believe that it was the only proper thing to do. Kerberos stared suspiciously at Saber and slowly brought its faces closer to him. Hey, it stopped attacking. Don't tell me it really understands language. John and the other officers muttered to each other as they watched the situation play out. Kerberos brought its 3 faces close to Saber and began to sniff him. Even with the massive jaws that looked big enough to swallow a cow closing in on him from 3 sides, Saber continued to stand stock still, not moving a muscle. Before long, Kerberos wriggled its 3 heads. No sooner had its heads exchanged looks than its massive bulk reared back and its 3 heads pointed skyward to let out a resounding howl. The trio of howls conveyed as much heat as if they were breathing fire. Ayaka could not help flinching. Strangely, however, she felt no urge to run. She may have instinctively sensed that the safest place in the ward world was that intersection where the most fighting strength was gathered. But she could not shake her unease. In fact, the scene that unfolded before her eyes an instant later threatened to overwhelm her with pure terror. The howls rang out, and the space around them shook. Then, as if in time with the vibrations, shadows began to rise throughout the city. Sunless back alleys, beneath parked cars, the underground spaces that spread below manholes. Something like black mist rose from everywhere and began to solidify into countless clumps around the intersection. Soon, they were collected in a few places. In each of those places, shockingly, they manifested as identical to the Kerberos that was already dominating the area. What the? John broke into a cold sweat as he surveyed his surroundings. Where a moment before there had been a single massive 3-headed beast, now there were countless more. They towered on top of buildings and over streets, completely surrounding the officers, Ayaka and Richard. The city that had been quiet a few minutes before was suddenly shrouded in the presence of death. The pack of giant beasts did not rampage. They just silently watched with eyes full of deep darkness. And that was not all. The shadows created at the feet of the pack also writhed and became new black mist, covering the area like clouds of flies. Whoa. A noise like buzzing insects reverberated through the intersection. The black mist combined with the sound reminded all of them of swarms of flies, brought out an even thicker atmosphere of death in that world. The next instant, the noise became a meaningful voice that beat on the eardrums of the surrounding group. Living ones, you who were living, attention. There is no life in you. Then, the shadows began to spread throughout the city, as if to reveal the world's true form, or as if to conceal its truth from someone. This is Jester. Oh, good. It started mixing nicely. The figure that had been watching events from the roof of a building a short distance away from the intersection where Saber's group was, Jester Karcher in the form of a young boy, muttered with a look of ecstasy as he watched the changing cityscape. The guard dog of Hades was a surprise. Tsubaki's rider made a real find. Jester spoke in childish tones, with a twisted grin on his face that was anything but innocent as he turned his senses to the state of the city. Huh, so that's where you're going, Miss Assassin. Sensing Assassin's magical energy moving toward the building in the center of the city through his back, Jester twisted the corners of his mouth, exposing a glimpse of sharp canine teeth. I guess you haven't given up hope yet. Maybe I should give you one more push. The city in the ward, the Kuroka residence. Who's there? Where are you? As if, in answer, an androgynous voice reached Tsubaki's ears from somewhere in the house. Try to find me, young lady. As if lured by the voice, Tsubaki began to stumble awkwardly through the house. Actually, I do rather need you to find me. What is happening in the present world? The fact that my consciousness, which ought to have dissolved into the world, has surfaced, means that it's something extraordinary. Zheng must be either in the underworld or the land of immortals, but is there no one left who knows me? The voice did not seem to be speaking to Tsubaki so much as analyzing the situation to itself. No, I sense several presences reminiscent of the Age of Gods. In the sky. Oh, an incarnation of the Watcher. Whoa, who is an ancestor, stranger, and dependent to me. Oh, is another god of the West. A nature deity, no, a part of one. I also sense an incredible amount of water approaching far to the west, but is it all coincidence or inevitability? Do you mean to test me? Very well, world mingled with the human order. O world of man, incomplete yet flawless, I accept your challenge. Wait, myself. Do not be hasty, do not lose. All things in heaven and earth, be elegant and refined as a burbling brook. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Tsubaki was confused by the words. The voice fell silent for a moment, seemingly troubled by her lack of comprehension before continuing. Oh, pardon me. I'm in a fix. Would you help me? Help you how? Let's play hide and seek. If you find me, you win, okay? Hide and seek. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm ready now. If you win, if you find me, I'll give you sweet, sweet syrup, all right? Okay. From a normal perspective, it sounded like nothing so much as a shady kidnapper. Tsubaki might not know much of life, but even she would normally be frightened and gone to call her parents. For some reason, however, she obeyed the voice. Tsubaki, still certain that the voice was a friend. It was a gentle voice that enveloped her. Almost like voices of parents that she had been longing for all this time. Tsubaki walked around the house as she was guided and ended up standing in front of a wall. But you sound like you're over this way. Tsubaki perceived the presence of the owner's voice by mistakenly believed that she could hear the voice coming from its direction. She came to a stop confused when, yes, it's fine. Try asking the wall to let you through. Huh? Don't worry. Your mommy and daddy can use Magecraft, can't they? You can use it too. Yeah. Tsubaki gave a firm nod, then faced the wall and made a wish. Please, open sesame. She shouted words from a folktale from a faraway land as she read in the past few days. Then, Tsubaki felt her whole body grow hot. It ran along her back, right where she had felt immense pain a long time ago, where her parents had done something they called an experiment with her. Tsubaki was surprised for a moment, but there was no pain, just warmth like gentle sunshine that coursed silently through her body. Magical energy began flowing out of Tsubaki and into the wall, without her even realizing that the feeling was her magical circuits responding. The next instant, the wall squirmed like a living thing and spread open, revealing a staircase down into the house's basement. Wow. Tsubaki's eyes sparkled at the mysterious scene before her. Now, do you think you can find me, princess? Guided again by the voice, Tsubaki slowly began to descend the stairs. Then, after passing through several more wards, all of which were automatically lifted in the same way, she found a mage's workshop decorated with numerous books and mystic codes, and a variety of experimental apparatus. Ah! Tsubaki shivered with surprise. No, she remembered this place. This place is... Deep inside this room was where she had always gone to help out. No. To help out with her mother and father's experiments. The memory of pain raced through her brain again. I have to hold it in. I have to be a good girl. I have to hold it in or Mama and Dad won't smile at me. It was like a backlash. For the past few days, she'd experienced the happy times that she had childishly continued to dream of. The pain that the young girl had only been able to forget because of those joyful experiences came back to her. Tsubaki's negative emotions and memories flooded out like a dam had burst, and her eyes were filled with tears when... Hi. A voice. A voice sounded in the room where she was on the verge of being consumed by her past trauma. It was just one word, but that one word was enough to make the fear welling up out of Tsubaki's heart dissipate like mist. It was that voice that, until just then, Tsubaki had only heard in her mind. But now it was different. The clear voice definitely making the air in the room vibrate. It looks like you found me. Here, have some candy syrup. The hand stretched out to Tsubaki, held out something like honey stored in a bivalve shell. The owner of the hand was a beautiful being. They had an androgynous appearance, and Tsubaki could not tell if they were a man or a woman. If she had seen Enkidu, she might have gotten a similar impression. Unlike the plainly dressed Enkidu, however, this being was shrouded in an aura of opulence, produced by their distinctive makeup and glamorous red clothing. The moment Tsubaki laid eyes on them, she wondered if they were a king or queen of some foreign country. Are you an important person? Tsubaki could not help asking the face of the dazzling being who was so out of place in that room. Not quite, the beauty answered. I was important a long time ago, and I'm not a person either. You see, I was in a place divorced from questions of social status and... Huh? Oh, I started talking about difficult subjects again. I'm sorry. It's been 2 millennia and a few centuries since I spoke with a human, you see. Actually, I'm something like an echo, so that's not strictly true. Oh, I said something you probably can't understand again. Things like this are why I never get along with humans and end up being driven from both dreams and from the water ebbing away. The beauty made a show of collapsing in a corner, weeping. Are you okay? Tsubaki forgot her fury and rushed to the beauty and patted her back. Thank you, human child. You're kind. The beauty regained their composure and steadied their breathing as they addressed Tsubaki. Oh, but you needn't be so concerned. I can only speak with you for a short time. Still, it's only you, the ruler of this world, with whom I can make a connection. What's a ruler of this world? It's something like the main character of a fairy tale. Oh, this won't do. The clumps of death are becoming active. Tsubaki stared worryingly at the beauty's look of anguish as she continued to stroke their back. The beauty forced themselves to smile at the young girl as they pointed to a section of the room. Don't worry. You just need to get that thing. Tsubaki saw what their finger was pointing at and looked confused. Tsubaki could not tell what it was for. She thought it looked a lot like the bows that people used in picture books. It had a more complicated shape, though. She thought that the hunter who beat the wolf at the end of the picture book of Little Red Riding Hood might have had one. This thing is called the God-Felling Crossbow. It's a scary, scary weapon that belonged to a whimsical human who was a very important king a long time ago. Actually, he was the first one to call himself a king among kings and emperors. That's Qin Shi Huang, right? Or, because it's Qin Shi Huang, or there's another name that they sometimes go by, which I'm now not able to think about. But there's like the two names. Qin Shi Huang is the one that we usually go with in Fate. A weapon? Did he beat bad guys with it? Well, I'm the one he beat with it. But I suppose he did, according to the values of humans at the time. The beauty answered, sounding embarrassed and looking away from Tsubaki, who was staring bright-eyed at the crossbow. Well, that doesn't matter. They continued, as if to gloss over the point. As long as you keep it with you, I'll be able to help you for the brief time until I disappear. I just want to know what's happening. If you bring me outside, I'll grant you a wish as thanks. Okay. Tsubaki did not understand what everything they had said meant, but she did understand that a strange person who had made her feel safe, like family, was saying that they would grant her a wish. Memories of picture books like Cinderella danced through Tsubaki's head as she innocently tried to lift the crossbow, but It was heavier than it looked, and she staggered and fell on her bottom. Oh, that was a close one. You're not hurt, are you? No, Tsubaki answered with a little difficulty. She tried to stagger to her feet, but Tsubaki was small even for her age, and it looked like all she could do was drag the crossbow behind her. You can't walk carrying it. Ugh, I hadn't counted on how weak humans are. Damn Zheng. He piled on too many mystic codes and decorations to kill me. This is clearly overkill. Between this, the Great Wall, and the Epeng Palace he was building, did he think everything needed to be big and showy? Honestly. The beauty was lambasting someone or other when they suddenly seemed to get an idea. Wait. In this world, you're the ruler, so if you believe it's light, you should be able to carry it easily. But does this girl not realize she's in a dream yet? The beauty kept their word to a whisper so that Tsubaki couldn't hear them. I know. You should call someone to help you. Can be your mother or father. I'm sure they'll help you if you ask them. Are you sure? Look, someone's here. Someone's here. Try asking them. The beauty proposed, hearing footsteps from the directions of stairs. Okay. Tsubaki expected her mother or father, who had been very nice to her for the past few days and was ready to ask them, but the person who appeared on the stairs was neither of her parents. So this is where you were. Is this your family's workshop? The mercenary, dressed all in black Sigma, first caught sight of Tsubaki. Who are you? And then noticed the beauty behind her, and assumed a defensive posture and watched to see if they were hostile. After seeing their magnificent red outfit, however, he doubtfully muttered, "The Inquisition?" Wait, is this frickin'? They made another Monty Python joke! They're literally making a no one expects the Spanish Inquisition joke. I'm like, when he saw the red, he literally, oh my god, why is Monty Python so tied in with fate? Why does this keep happening? First the Holy Grail movie, and now, literally, I cannot believe that the Spanish Inquisition, it is worth mentioning, one of them in the Spanish Inquisition is wearing a, Amelia Earhart sort of pilot thing, so, oh my god. That's crazy. Anyways, the city in the ward, Crystal Hill, top floor. Oh, hello, Professor. It's me. You know me. Flat, this response is, what's going on? Where are you calling from? The cell phone rested atop a makeshift altar. It was on speaker mode, and a man's voice, in tones of mingled relief and confusion, emanated from it. Oh, sir. Sorry I took so long to call you. I'm, not really sure. It's almost like I'm in a dream or... What? Don't tell me you actually overslept and forgot to call me. What? No. What do you mean? That's not what I mean. I mean, I'm in a ward. Yeah, I mean, inside a ward. It's kind of like the repeat of the past. You and Gray got trapped inside in that cemetery in Wales. Only this one is a repeat of the present. Wait, hold on a moment. Calm down and explain the situation from the beginning. Flat broke in a delighted grin when he heard the voice of the man, Lord Elmo II, return to a normal tone he used to reprimand students. He smiled because he knew that despite the situation, or because of the situation, he would be able to hear an Elmaloy school lecture in top form. He also smiled because he had faith that the lecture would lead a way out of his current predicament. Of course, whether Flat could make that way succeed or not would depend on him. Once he had heard the whole story, the Lord of the Clock Tower made an enigmatic pronouncement. Most likely, an underworld. Flat was very visibly confused by Elmloy II's statement. Hang on, sir. Wouldn't that mean we're already dead? Be quiet for a moment, Flat. And may I take it that you'll be cooperative with regard to escaping, Overseer? Yeah, although I won't interfere in factional conflicts. Besides, the Holy Church owes you a few favors. You saved Sister Illumia, who I seem to be stuck with, and okay, is that a Fate Illumia? That is a Case Files character, right? Yep, Elmoy Case Files character, got it. No, we're talking about personal debts. I was also saved by Father Carabo, but it would, okay, so Father Carabo, let's see that. Carabo is, he was the executor in the Mystic Eyes train. Yep, right? It would be unbecoming of both of us to discuss those obligations between our organizations. In this case, I will be satisfied if you assist my student in your capacity as overseer. I have no intention of asking you to put yourself in harm's way. Hansa answered with a wry smile and a shake of his head. Flat, the rumors about your teacher were right. He doesn't act much like a mage. I can't believe he survived in that den of demons who call the clock tower acting like that. I was simply blessed with good fortune and connections. I don't need anyone to tell me how lacking my own powers are. Excuse me, I didn't mean to insult you. That was a compliment. That attitude of yours is probably what convinced some of my colleagues and predecessors to lend you a hand. A debt is a debt, even if you try to deny it. I'll pay back what I can on my own. If you ever turn into a hematophage, I'll try to look the other way as long as you don't do harm. I see you're a bit atypical for a priest of the Holy Church yourself. Although, of course, I have neither the inclination nor the ability to become a hematophage, Elmoy II answered in apparent exasperation before resuming his explanation. When I said underworld, I of course did not mean that you literally died. I was describing the nature of the area within that ward. What do you mean? Doesn't seem like heaven or hell to me. I'm well aware that you didn't pay attention in class, Flat. Now, get rid of those commonplace preconceptions. Remember that this is partly guesswork, but I believe the area has its origins in the magic circuits in the mind of the girl Kuraoka Tsubaki. If the demonic or possibly divine beast that Father Cervantes saw at a distance, that Kerberos was invigorated in that world, then it probably is the nature of an underworld. You mean like they match each other? When Flat said it was like in a dream, he hit the nail on the head. There are also cases in which dreams are perceived as an afterlife in a mythical sense. A servant of the comatose girl, Kuraoka Tsubaki, created a pseudo-underworld using her dreams as a catalyst. There are other conceivable explanations, of course, but adding the information I've gathered to what you told me, I think it's fair to say that's what's most likely. At that point, Hansa, who kept silent thus far, asked a question. Given my position, I can't discuss the plurality of afterlives, but do you mean this is an underworld that mirrors the real world? There are any number of underworlds that resemble the living world. In fact, the tombs of pharaohs, emperors, and the likes are themselves rituals to carry a city with them to the underworld. There are numerous accounts of people who saw their ancestors engaged in an identical way in identical locations, the way of life in identical locations after death. And the fact the creator of this ward world made it an exact duplicate of this place inhabited by the living suggests it is an extremely systematic entity, even for a servant. The fact that it took Kerberos into that world suggests that it may be continuing to evolve, even as we speak. Evolve? Evolve? What do you mean, sir? That heroic spirit is likely the concept of death itself, an embodiment of the underworld. A deity of the underworld such as Hades, Hera, Nurgle, or Ereshkigal. No, it's not possible to summon a spirit origin of that caliber. Or it shouldn't be. Well, yeah, because those need pseudo-servants. Besides, the ruler of an underworld would make that ward world more closely resemble their own domain. It's probably something less tied to an underworld and closer to the concept of death itself. Elmoy II then proceeded to dissect the ward world he had never seen as smoothly as if he was reading a predetermined conclusion off a blackboard. That servant's personality has likely continued to learn since the moment it was summoned by adapting to its master Kuraoka Tsubaki's reactions. It's possible that it could become a completely different entity each time it's summoned. Given that the summoning of a ghost liner is already a rare event, however, we have no basis for comparison. But now that you have entered its world as new foreign entities, it may display a different type of learning. But why aren't we brainwashed, sir? Flat interjected. They had passed people in an apparently brainwashed state on the way to the building. Both Flat and Hansa had been wary of them and prepared defensive measures, but there was yet no sign of brainwashing spell being directed at them. There must be some difference. There are so many different methods of brainwashing that it's impossible to guess. We can narrow it down by focusing the question of why it doesn't brainwash you. Yes, a why done it, right? It's your catchphrase. Oh, a why done it, huh? True, we already know who done it, and as long as Magecraft is involved, how done it is pointless. Still, if that's your catchphrase, you sound like more of a detective than a mage. Elmaloy II stammered for a moment at Hans's remark, then coughed and continued. Don't. I'm simply using knowledge I've acquired for analysis. If I had a detective's insight or inspiration, my life would have been rather different. In any case, I believe that the reason you haven't been brainwashed lies in the reason you were taken into that world. Elmaloy II proceeded to highlight the phenomena of people who left the city returning while behaving strangely, the mysterious disease infecting animals, and other strange occurrences. According to information from Flu, a mage of his acquaintance, while there were individual differences, there were cases of symptoms resembling internal bleeding among humans and animals. Based on that information, Elmaloy II theorized that there was a distinction between those infected with a disease like curse, who had only their minds brought to that world, and those who were dragged into it by force, body and all. It's highly probable that the latter is the result of treating you as enemies. The former also appears to be a hostile act, but those affected suffer no physical harm, and there's no indication that it's using them in the Grail War. It's probable that it's simply using unusual means and has no hostile intent. You see that all the time at the clock tower. People who think they're doing the right thing when, from everyone else's perspective, it's a huge nuisance. I'd like to yell like you're one to talk, but I'll refrain from the time being. In any case, there are several conceivable ways to exit that world, but I suppose waiting for it to run out of magical energy isn't realistic. Judging from the circumstances, defeating the servant and master should be the quickest option. But given that you formed an alliance with the police to take the master under your protection, you wouldn't do anything that would endanger her. Even if there weren't an alliance, wouldn't he have found some excuse to eliminate that option? Both Jack and Hansa wondered. Even if they tried to point that out, however, they felt certain that Elmaloy II would just dodge the question, so they simply shrugged and continued to listen. Half the nuns, on the other hand, were wondering, far more logically than Elmaloy II, why they didn't just eliminate the master. Negotiating with the girl Tsubaki without harming her, and convincing her to open a way out for you herself is a possibility, but the question is whether she's even aware that she's a master. If you use suggestion or other means to force her, her servant may perceive it as a hostile act and make a more active attempt to eliminate you. Should we negotiate with the servant then? I already told you. It's most likely closer to a system than a being with a distinct personality. Whatever it is, it would be best to avoid making contact with it before we can be certain of the result. This also applies to combat, of course. We got a good look at how frightening that servant can be last night. After reminding them not to be reckless, Elmaloy II was far more wary of them, of the being that controlled the space Flat and the others currently occupied than anyone actually present. He had, after all, accompanied the heroic spirit who had once fought alongside him into his reality marble, and that awesome sight was seared into his memory. If that world corresponds to the underworld, and the servant is something associated with it, then you have nowhere to run, at least within that ward. Death is everywhere, not just in the land of the dead. Mystically speaking, the concept of death exists even in air, water, stone, and earth. And that room is no exception. Once he had finished that grave pronouncement, Elmaloy II drove his point home by urging Flat and the others to be cautious. In other words, the place has always been inside that heroic spirit's body. You're like Pinocchio swallowed by the whale. In a whale's belly, huh? That's great! What's great about it? Flat's wild remark drew a shout from Elmaloy II, but Flat continued, his eyes sparkling. Didn't you tell us in class that a hero's return from certain death is kind of a return to the womb? Oh my god. We're doing the hero's journey? And about the ritual themed around death and rebirth that everyone goes through when they reach the rank of pride? And about someone who got eaten by a giant fish, then spit out and awakened to faith and became a superhero and saved a city? Ah, don't tell me you mean the prophet Jonah and Leviathan. Was Jonah... Wait, Jonah was in Leviathan? I never put that together. I thought it was just a whale. Oh. It's true that heroic tales such as giant fishes, labyrinths, and the land of the dead have frequently been linked to a return to the womb. You know, I'm gonna be real, I never expected the phrase return to the womb to come up here. But here we are. But I hope you don't plan to turn in a report with that sloppy understanding. Oh, well, your supplemental lecture on that can wait. The exasperated Elmaloy II changed the topic to concrete examples of escape. The fact that the room you're in is linked to the outside probably means there's something that harmonizes well with the world in that same location in reality. The most likely possibility is a corpse, but I doubt the influence of an ordinary corpse would extend inside the ward. It must be a corpse under some kind of mystical influence, or else the conditions must be right to make it harmonize better with the servant that's creating this world. You said the room looks like a workshop. What are its characteristics? Well, there are a lot of decorations and things that look Mesopotamian. I see. If that workshop does belong to that heroic spirit's factions, then asking the chief of police to go there for us would be asking him to go to his death. In that case, we should investigate the heroic spirit's characteristics from within. I don't like using them as decoys, but if you're right that a hero from another faction is doing battle with Kerberos in the city, then I suggest you take the opportunity to visit the girls' hospital room, or the home of the mages called cour. When the voice from the speaker reached that point, one of the nuns keeping watch in all directions shouted, "Hansa! What is it? Something's climbing from below. I think it's a servant." An instant later, one of the glass walls shattered into tiny fragments and a figure stole into the room from the outside. What? What is it, Flat? What happened? A frantic shout came from the speaker. Hansa neatly cleared away the flying shards of window glass by striking his arms at high speed, then addressed the figure that had appeared through the window. Whoa there. So you ended up here too? I saw you in the guardhouse. Are you a foreign priest? The newly arrived assassin shot a glance at Hansa, then surveyed her surroundings as if to say that she would deal with him later before focusing on Flat, who had what looked like command spells on his right hand. I ask you. Oh, hi. Are you a servant by any chance? Wow. Are you another one of the mages who seek the Holy Grail? The question puzzled Flat for a moment. He pondered briefly before answering. I'm not sure. At first I wanted to because it was cool, but now, well, my servant is in trouble, so I guess it'd be nice if I could use the Grail to fix that. I wonder what I should do in the end. Suppose it's valuable, so do you think I should donate it to a museum or something? Getting a question for an answer, Assassin narrowed her eyes and scrutinized Flat. He did not look like he was lying or trying to provoke her. It was difficult to believe, but he genuinely appeared to be wondering if he ought to donate the Grail to a museum. Are you a mage? Assassin glared at Flat for a short while, with an expression that said that she could not decide if she ought to eliminate him. As if to help Flat out of that predicament, Hansa loudly clapped his hands and drew her attention to him. I believe you seek the way of another faith than mine. I'm here to oversee this Holy Grail War, but it doesn't look like they have any intention of fighting it. Not until we make it out of this ward world, at least. I told you that to mediate... Okay, this is him. Told you that to mediate in my role as overseer, but of course that doesn't limit your actions, Hansa said with a shrug. If assassins seriously came after him with an intent to kill, then he was probably doomed. He could take on hematophages due to affinity. Against a martial heroic spirit, however, he would be the one at a disadvantage. Nevertheless, he made no move to shrink or hide. He boldly addressed Assassin in order to carry out the order of the master, who had been like a father to him, and do his duty as an overseer. Assassin eyed Hansa warily, but not with enmity. Fortunately for Flat and Hansa, she currently felt indebted due to having manifested using magical energy of an evil fiend, and made a pact with someone who was not one of her brethren, with the Lionheart of all people. Those circumstances must have made her view others with greater tolerance than she had on the first day. Even so, there was a line she was unwilling to cross. One question. How do you plan to open a way to the outside? Her question was posed in a solemn tone. Even Flat sensed that, oh, this is one of those questions that raise a death flag if you get it wrong. He hesitated to answer for a moment, but the answer came from the phone on the altar, which had been left in speaker mode. We had just agreed on a policy of avoiding violence as much as possible. If you want to escape it, even if it means harming a young girl, we have no means of stopping you, but allow me to explain that there is another way. Who are you? Something like that boy's guardian. I realize it's selfish of me to ask you to believe what I say when I'm not there myself, but... Assassin considered for a while, then still somewhat warily asked, wait, oh yeah, if there is a way for our life to be saved, then that is the Lord's will. I will at least hear you out. Flattened Berserker, who was in wristwatch form, was relieved to see that Assassin was willing to listen. But, as if to smash that atmosphere, a young voice wafted into the room on the mild breeze. It's hopeless, miss. They all turned to face the voice. They saw a cloud of smoke like black mist. It soon began taking the shape of a human figure as a variety of colors emerged from it. That way doesn't exist in this world that little Tsubaki made. It was the slight form of a young boy. The sinister magical energy that surrounded his body, however, showed that he was not what he seemed. When Hansa saw that, he affectedly clicked his tongue, then raised the corners of his mouth. What have we here? Are you sure you didn't want to hide your magical energy like you did at the hotel? You must be confident to come here in person and spoil your trick. I had a feeling I was being watched earlier. I won't let my guard down with you, Executor. I doubt the same trick would work twice. Besides, the boy stifled a sinister chuckle and shifted his gaze to Assassin before continuing with a look of ecstasy. I want to see all sorts of looks on Miss Assassin's face as soon as possible. See? By the time he said that, Assassin was already in motion. One look at his expression, the magical energy that surrounded him, told her that he was the Hematophage who had summoned her, Jester Karcher. Her black cloak glided around the ground. A knife hand shot of its fold aimed at the boy's neck. But while her blade-like fingertips did indeed pierce Jester's body, she could feel no resistance. The boy's body dissolved into mist and reformed a short distance away. When it reformed, however, it was no longer the boy, but the young man, Hematophage, who had appeared at the police station and in front of the hospital. Did you really think I'd come to meet my enemies in person like a simpleton, Assassin? Of course I did want to come myself, you're correct. You might even say our hearts are in sync. I'm sorry to let you down, my dear Assassin, but can't you understand the heartache it cost me to send a false body to see you? Jester continued to ramble narcissistically with a mixture of ecstasy and sorrow. Hansa guessed that it was not just provocation, he probably meant it. From behind, the concerned voice of Elmore II sounded over the phone. Boy, Flat, what am I hearing right now? I'm not really sure, but I think it's a confession of love? Jester did not seem to hear the banter between teacher and student. He kept his attention fixed on Assassin as he excitedly spread his arms wide with the broken window behind him. Jester bowed deeply with the air of a conductor greeting his audience before a performance. Just then, the world twisted. Closed off world. Central intersection. What happened? Surrounded on all sides by Kerberos and black grotesqueries, Saber and the police officers found themselves locked in a stalemate. They'd been holding the line against the beasts that repeated what sounded like an eerie chant, now advancing, now retreating. Ever since Saber had asked his questions, however, the things had stopped actively attacking them and shifted to preventing them from leaving the intersection. But less than a minute earlier, the situation had changed. It was not just their circumstances. The whole world seemed to be starting to transform. Hordes of rats burst out of every nook and cranny in the brand new concrete cityscape, and what looked like clouds of black dust became visible in the gusts of wind between the tall buildings. Murders of crows around the area. Symbols of death were overtaking not just the intersection but the entire cityscape. At the same time, the demonic beast attacks intensified. The groups of words chanted out of every shadow in the city was becoming a deafening roar in Ike and the others' ears. It was as if the whole world were crying out in pain, or as if it were a newborn letting out its first cry. This is The path of death, the underworld, the road to Hades, its judgment, its gospel, is eternal peace, is suffering. Closed off world in the sky. The ward world linked to Kuraoka Tsubaki. It was a closed off limited space on the scale of a city. Even its sky had a boundary. The blue of its sky was merely the real world projected on the border of the ward. Anyone on the ground who attempted to escape in an airplane or helicopter should have been turned around by the same distorted space that stopped anyone who tried to leave the city on foot. But the sky was silently being invaded. Like a stain spreading on the ceiling of an old house with a leaky roof, that abnormality continued to spread slowly but steadily. Soon, a section of the sky was cut away, and a man and woman emerged from it hand in hand. They immediately entered freefall. Oh, were we a smidgen late? Hurry up! True. Looks like the party's already underway. The two new figures, the true caster faction, Francesca and Francois, were clasping each other's hands like lovers as they continued to plummet upside down. Before their eyes was a snowfield recreated like a mirror image. That world was already in the process of becoming completely detached from Snowfield. Beginning in the city center, it was gradually losing its color, and a jet black darkness was beginning to spread across it. Black shadows that rose from the ground became black clouds that began to cover the city. The two prelades continued to laugh with delight as they plunged into the midst of the rising jet black cumulonimbus clouds. As they laughed within the cloud bank, instead of thunder, they heard cries from the ward world itself. That's a good shot. I like that. That's super solid, yeah. We were right about there. Be at peace, suffer torments, with the road to Hades in my thrall. I shall defend my master, the Holy Grail, deliver it to my master, to my friend, the Holy Grail. So yeah, it's the world speaking. Isn't it wonderful? This sounds like a world worth tricking, Francesca shouted amid the clouds, her eyes blazing. Before long, the pair's fall abruptly slowed until they were at last they were floating lightly in midair. Using the highest caliber of illusion wielded by heroic spirits, they had performed the nearly rule-breaking feat of fooling the world's physical laws. Fooling this world's a piece of cake. I knew it must be built on a dream. But you'd better not get careless, Francesca answered Prelati with a smirking word of warning. If it's based on a dream, that means it can turn into anything depending on the girl who's having it. They burst out of the clouds, and Francesca laughed with the face of a child, looking forward to an event as she looked down on the night dark world below. I hope the Lionheart's still alive and kicking, that big King Arthur fanboy. The pair spoke their last lines in perfect unison. Will you despair? Or will rage consume you? We can't wait to find out. Closed off world, Crystal Hill top floor. I am swords, I am beasts, I am thirst, I am hunger, I am the bearer of death, I am the player of death, I am death, I am death, 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 death. The emotionless screams completely filled the space around the top floor. The world itself was screaming as if it were a single organism, dyeing the city in black. Assassin's eyes widened. Flat's eyes sparkled as he kept up a shouted conversation with the wristwatch of the cell phone. Hansa directed the nuns into formation with gestures as he grimly muttered, The way it talks. I can't believe it, but... Given his position, Hansa could not help but think of a certain passage from the Book of Revelation. He also considered that it might be a historical person associated with a similar anecdote. But what El Malloy had just said about concepts flashed through his brain, he arrived at a guess. An embodiment of death. Could it be the Pale Rider, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse? Assassin, meanwhile, shouted at Jester's double, who continued to laugh happily. What did you do? Oh, this isn't something I did. You must realize by now, I didn't create this world. Therefore, the one responsible for this beautiful transformation must be... I'm not asking about that. Assassin already knew what Jester was getting at. The fact that he was there naturally meant that he understood and wanted to provoke her. Even knowing it was a provocation, however, Assassin could not help directing her rage at him. What did you do to that girl? With the sound of her angry roar, Jester touched one hand to his chest and made a respectful bow, his eyes brimming with desire. Oh, thank you. I'm truly, truly delighted. Your emotions, your true feelings as a human being were in that cry. It doesn't matter that it was hatred. Right now, beyond a doubt, you are looking at me. You seem to be glancing at Kura Okasubaki, but I'm sure that won't last much longer. I'm asking what you did. Nothing much, Jester told Assassin with an unpleasant curl of his lips. He delivered his answer with all the emotions of a declaration of love. All the while, he watched her every movement. I just gave her a little encouragement to help her chase grand dreams, like a child should. Okay. Damn. Damn. We're continuing on with an interlude next time, guys, as we continue on with this. Again, great mix of, like, this is stuff that we saw in the anime at the ending there, but also a lot of new stuff. And hey, we're getting real close to reaching the climax of what I know, which is really exciting. So, yeah. Thank you all for watching, guys. We'll see you next time for some more Fate Strange Fake as we move on to the interlude here. So we're on page 133. Okay, so yeah, we're about a little over halfway through now. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Ciao. Yo.